Jim, I don't roll like that. That's I don't have a plan. I mean, I've been thinking about it. I listened to the podcast that you'd sent over. I clicked on all the material and reviewed it, listened to a couple other things, but I have some things written down in Joplin, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
No, it sounds really good. There's a lot to talk about, and whatever we can't cover today, we'll cover next time. And if we can't cover it all next time, we just keep going until it all gets done. How's that sound?
So here's how I was thinking about starting since you asked. I listened to that podcast and I've been, for whatever reason, avoiding the Aubrey Marcus podcast because I just got too much information I'm taking in, right? I'm taking a lot. And it looked like it was a pretty cool podcast, but I've been avoiding it. So I really thank you for putting it in front of me. And as soon as I got into it, it didn't take more than a few seconds to see where the conversation was going. And I took notes during it, Jim, and the first thing I wrote down was, it was to the effect of, good effort and authentic intention are like a prayer that the universe responds to. And it got me thinking. And it got me thinking that when you are in when you're in a profession like ours, where you're engaging people all the time, but you're not just engaging people, you're moving people, right? You're talking to people about aspirations, goals over a career, right?
Yeah.
And during that time, you learn that is a fact. And I learned it really, and what I mean by that is that good effort and authentic intention are like a prayer that the universe responds to. And my first eye-opening experience in this was as a very young salesperson working on 100% commission, selling the advertising that appears on the back of register receipt tape at a supermarket.
Okay.
And I was having a little bit of a tough time, right? And I remember, like I did all the time, just making the phone calls, setting the appointments. And I got an appointment with the most unlikely of potential clients, a frame shop. I was used to selling to dry cleaners and ice cream shops, mechanics, pizza shops, things like that. A little bit more. That was a little bit more like that, a little bit more transactional, right? Frame shops, a little off the beaten path for my normal prospect. So here I am having a tough time. I just set a meeting. I'm not feeling great about it, right?
Yeah.
So I go in, I drive over to the place of business and I park out front. I'm early. And same day appointment, by the way, right? I probably woke up, started dialing at 8 a.m., probably got this appointment within the first half hour and, probably saw the person and, we're probably within 2 hours. Now I'm sitting, out in front. It's probably October, I think, I'm guessing, because it was cold. And I'm sitting out in front of the business in my car. And I kind of was like, you know what, man, you've really nailed these appointments, but now setting the appointments, but now you got to nail with the same enthusiasm you're using, and the same like authentic presentation that you're giving over the phone. You got to really bring that to the face-to-face meeting today, Joe. You got to bring, the things that make you do well when you're over the phone. It's that enthusiasm. It's that, authenticity they hear. They hear that you're really, really trying that effort. So I literally coached myself up to just kind of do it like over the phone and to those exact attributes, bring those exact attributes. And Jim, I gave the pitch. I stopped like I was coached to. Which would you like? The big or the little?
Right.
And she said, Hampton Hall, just a little, but barely. It was an easy sale. And I knew when I got back to my car, and actually beforehand, when I knew it was closed and we were writing up the contract and closing it out, I was saying in the back of my head, something just happened here. Like, she didn't come prepared to buy. Like, before that meeting, I think I had just set so many appointments because I was a hard worker that I was just showing up in front of everybody who was there to buy, right? And I was able to catch the sales, right? And I had finally moved somebody, and I knew that it wasn't dumb luck. It was what I told myself I needed to do, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. And I guess I'll start with that, Jim, because that was an eye-opening experience. And it's not one that I don't think a lot of people get to have, right? When you iterate and iterate and iterate, how do I move this person? Right. So that was just a piece of the interview. That was just a piece of the podcast. That was a start of it. And that's been the thread of a lot of what I've been doing for the past 10 years is working on intention. So.
Wow. Well, Joe, let me say, I think your work really is tremendous. It's extremely important. And what you do is very powerful and very brave. And I'm not even kind of making this up. I mentioned that I had some notes here about stuff I want to talk about. I'm ready to chuck them because I want to talk also about authentic intention and focused effort or just intentional effort. Because you just said the magic spell a couple sentences ago, because I was thinking of it in my head and then you said it out loud, showing up. You know, it's really one of the most important fundamental principles of sales and living. Just show up. You know, if a person just shows up, it means a couple of things. Number one, they have courage. So much easier to not show up, to stay in bed, to jump on your phone, to be busy, to not be able to take that call. Countless reasons. The dog needs something, the grass needs mowing. I really should be checking what's in the mailbox. What's my neighbor doing? What's on TV? And someone told me this too. I know so many people. I've talked to so many different kinds of people from every strata of life. And I kind of have picked out the rubies in the dust, you know, the gemstones, and or not even just pick them out, but they just resonate with me. And gentleman, you know, I was asking him pretty complex metaphysical question. And he basically boiled it down to, look, you just got to show up and not get in your way. That was like phase 2. It's like, okay, I'm here. Don't get in your way. You know, don't think about it too hard. Don't doubt yourself. Don't put the kibosh on something. Don't say, oh, this isn't going to work out. So you got to show up and you stay brave. And in my opinion, what I hear you say when you tell your story about your first customer, you know, we're all attracted on a lot of different levels to people who are confident. Confidence really resonates when you're in a room with a bunch of people, whatever, you're talking, whatever, and then somebody arrives late. And let's just say they have supreme confidence. Let's just imagine for a second that this person that I've just talked about walking into the room feels sovereign. Let's say, for whatever reason, they feel fearless. They've walked into the room, they know they're late. They don't say anything. They very graciously, you know, nod, they sit down, they're quiet. But people looked at them and all of us can tell there's something different about this person. Are they radiating light? You know, that's kind of a poetic way to think about it. What is going on? You know, it's attractive. I want to be like this person. I feel their confidence. They're not worried that they walked in late. They must know something that I don't. And I have a feeling that's what your customer picked up on. I think that's what you're expressing right now.
Yeah, and it is. And when you said stay brave, right? It's not, that's the important part, stay, right? And you've started that with don't get in your way, right? So stay open and stay brave, right? Yep. I think that's probably step 2. Stay open, stay brave. And it's that since sustaining that is that's man's quest, maybe, right? I don't know, but it's not true, right? Nobody is something all the time. And I, as a younger man before work life, got a lot of comments that you're cocky, you're confident, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, when I walked in the room and I was late and I needed to project something to make sure that I wasn't taken down a notch. Yeah, I guess in that moment, um, instinctually, maybe you saw a cocky, confident person. Hopefully not cocky, right? Confident in that perspective, but maybe
Yeah.
cocky to whoever received it. The same word, same behavior, perceived different ways. Cocky and confident, different words. But yeah, so that for the moment you were there, right? And if people are only used to seeing you in the classroom, where you maybe have to bring a certain level of confidence, that they're only used to seeing you somewhere else. They might only see a certain side of you, and they don't see maybe what it took to get you there, or that that's a piece of you. I think that's an interesting point, right? Because people don't show up brave, or if they do, they usually don't show up, everywhere brave, right? It's hard to hold on to.
I'm sorry. I know I'm interrupting you, and I have a tendency to do that. And your words are just making me. They're really triggering a lot of passion in
Well, I
me.
was rambling, so thank you.
Well, no, that's all right. I mean, we all have a lot to say, and what I'm stuck on was the difference between being cocky and being courageous. We all have those doubts. We try to wrestle with that. There's no question in my mind. This is all going back to authentic intention, because and that is a critical part of the meaning of life. I mean, you're touching on one of the most important things that we all must work on. When I think about, the meaning of life, all these things, if there's just one thing that I could do, I'd be all set. It's really not like that, right? It's more like we've got a lot to do. And the best stuff is the hardest stuff, because when you put in that authentic intention and you put in that courageous effort, you reap what you sow, and you generate something that is solid, that's stable, that shines, that's golden. And in my mind, those are all nice words, but how do we get there? How do I start? And now I'm going to drop my first bomb on you. We all have to love ourselves. See, are we taught this really ever in school? Do our parents know that they need to teach us this? We've read about that now. I mean, and after a number of decades on this planet, you start to realize, so really a lot more going on here than perhaps I was taught, or I was brought up or led to believe. And here I am walking into a meeting late. I got some people. I scan the room. I look and I see that, wow, somebody must think I'm the owner, because they're like shirking in their seat. And I see somebody else has got a smirk on their face, and maybe they're envious, or they've experienced some kind of feeling like, oh, that guy gets to show up late and I don't. Or, why are we getting interrupted? Or, but what happens is that the person in the room who's sitting, who notices the late person coming in and really feels what's going on, can tell by their facial expressions, the speed of their movement, maybe the tone of their voice, the gentleness of their nod. The person who's sitting there and noticing that, who's not shirking, who's not envious, who doesn't form some kind of a snap judgment, who doesn't have, who's not reacting, the person who sits there and contemplates this with authentic intention, they're allowing that person to be who they are. And I hope the reason is because they know that they have been in that situation, the person sitting, and that they have arrived late at a meeting. And how do you stay? Now, this is a very mild example. We could talk about more intense meetings where there's a lot more on the line, or a lot more money on the line, or jobs are on the line, or companies are on the line, and really amplify this up. But if you love yourself, that's the most important thing. And that means Nothing can hurt you. You're fearless. You've accomplished what we're talking about. You've kind of instrumented your authentic intention into a fearlessness. And guess what that's called? Higher consciousness. Now, I don't want to jump around too much. And before we started, I was saying, oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. And, what are you going to ask me? And you said, oh, that's not how we roll. And there's so much to talk about. But I know, Joe, whenever we talk, we get right down to the most important stuff. Life is finite. I hope I live past 100. But if I don't, I still may not have enough time to help all the people that I want to help, to tell all the people the things that I've learned, to listen to all the things that people need to share with me. And my point about that, about life being impermanent, is think about how absolutely mission critical your life is. Our lives are. And to attempt to become more highly conscious, well, that's the gold ring.
So let me chime in, because you said something there, and I'm bringing something up here. So
yeah,
I'm going to read something here. They need to see you with unapologetic conviction, standing up for what's right, even if it's not popular, and especially when it's scary to do so. They need to feel you be afraid and do the thing anyway. They need to feel your energy become stronger because you did the damn thing. They need to see, hear, taste, and feel you being a force for good in the family, in the community, and in the world. They need to hear what it sounds like when you flush fear-based obedience down the toilet. Teach the people that you surround yourself with to be brave.
Well, I'd love that. Go ahead.
Let me read one more, Jim. It's great. This is the last part. I was going to start with this last paragraph, but I want to read both. So here's the last one. Realizing this, that I'm doing my best to be a better embodier of bravery every day for those around me, whether it's having the tough conversation with my peers rather than avoiding it, or being more bold with my work and devotion to helping humanity. And if gifting your community with the lessons of bravery is important to you, I'd invite you to be committed to be a little bit of a better embodier of bravery every day. And I think you mentioned be a bit braver, right? Maybe that speaks to that a bit.
Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. It's like a clarion call was kind of what I heard. It's like so whoever wrote that is clearly trying to send an uplifting message to people who don't feel so good, who doubt themselves, who admire or seek the bravery that they find in others. And it is so doable. I mean, think about this, Joe. What is bravery? Bravery, okay, is it like an energetic condition? I mean, physically, okay, it's probably a consequence of a combination of hormones and endorphins and neurotransmitters and other kinds of physiological chemicals that in the end result end up with me feeling somehow fearless. Is there a gene for that? What I would say is, yeah, you've got all the parts. You have the tools. We all are born with the tools because we know that some people are brave. It's not like they bought it in a store. It's not like somebody gave it to them. I mean, it's within an inch. It's all that it is a change in attitude. It's you can flip your switch. All you got to do in the ways that people have found a way to get up off the couch and no longer procrastinate and go out there and do something for somebody else. It's the same thing. It's within a moment away. It's very possible.
So you said something there. It's do something for somebody else, right? So the continuation of my story is I I started to get better and better at, learning how to take just enthusiasm and authentic, intention, and actually doing techniques, right? Asking open-ended questions, doing different things. We won't go into details, but doing different things to up my chances, right? Classic persuasion, right? Bernaysian, Chaldeanian persuasion, right? And I didn't know I was learning, from the experts, but when I look at the scripts that are still stuck in my head from those 3 years of selling register tape, it was taken from, the pantheon of persuasion, right? Every sentence, every nuance, every inflection was purposeful, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know it, but I was being taught in a very, small, in a very vacuous setting, I guess. I don't know, small setting, selling register tape, right? Small transactions, small cycles, persuasion, right?
Sounds like a tough job.
It was, but it was a hell of a way to cut your teeth, right? So I learned persuasion as a tool to make money. And then we get to the next part of the Eisenstein podcast. The myth of self-collapsing. This is the next part. This is several parts down.
Well, Joe, if you're cool,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got me like hanging on by my fingernails right now. I need to know more about when you were talking about service, helping others, and the authentic tension, and that led you to getting better at what you do and persuasion. And I just want to get here's the question.
Yeah, I didn't use it for
So
service for a while. I went to fast
hold on,
forward
here's my
past all the
question.
evil. Okay, go ahead.
who's gonna win the interruption battle? I love to. I'm gonna concede.
No, go for it. No,
Here's
I'm
the
avoiding
question.
telling. Go ahead.
Where does selfless service fit into that? Are we all here trying to make money in order to pay our bills?
Let's fast forward a little less further than I wanted to, because you got me back to the point we needed to touch on. So it didn't come for a while. It probably took me, let's put it 9 years. It took me 9 years to finally have something click. And I was back in, it's funny, it was the first time in 9 years I was back in a lone wolf type environment, right? So I started out lone wolf, independent contractor. There's a big network of people to call and talk to and things like that, but I was alone. I didn't see anybody all day, every day, just was out there grinding. Fast forward 9 years later, I'm in technology and I got my first enterprise sales job after the reseller. And I worked for called a $15 million startup, offices in California and Israel, and total of maybe 90 employees across the globe. And I was a lone wolf again. And CRO hired me and he said, go build the territory, right? And there were some customers there, but go build it. And it was actually it's not the type of job for many people, but it was like the perfect thing for me. So I went in, and going back to all the way to the beginning, I, just put together the process, what were we going to do? How were we going to measure it? Had a small team, 2 engineers to work with. And for 2.5 years, I was back in that vacuum, right? My own little vacuum of persuasion. And I decided this time around, at the very beginning of it, actually, because I wanted to do this in 2010 when it was becoming, when I started to learn about it, right? The give to get, and give, right? So I learned, but it took me 6 years to actually put it into practice on a daily basis, right? So I was back in this very autonomous sales position, and kind of like, I don't know, I felt like I lucked into the situation, right? But here I am working for a really cool technology company with like really smart people who were lifting me up. and I was able to execute really, really well. Persuasion, but the difference was I was building relationships. I was helping my partner community. I was enabling them and enabling the customers that they kind of brought to me. So I became a sower rather than a salesperson, right? I became a sower of enablement and value and help, and I'm there for you. I'll do the dirty work for you,
That's awesome.
and it reaped a lot of rewards. It was very successful. But Jim, here's what happened. I got out of the vacuum. Okay, something happened in the company that caused me to come out of the vacuum. It was a good thing. It was a positive thing. I was actually promoted. But once I got outside that vacuum, people would walk into the boardroom late and Joe would be very judgmental. Where 6 months before, when he was at the QBR and he didn't care because he knew he was going to go back and be in his office doing what he needed to do, it was a much different situation. So I brought the mindset of reciprocity, right? That's what I called it there. Right. That's just very basic, into the situation. But once I had to bring other people, once I had to practice reciprocity among people who weren't practicing reciprocity, it caused angst. And that wasn't the first time I found myself in that situation. We'll leave that as a pigtail for maybe another conversation altogether on where that would go. But yeah, man. So that's my story with getting into it. I learned persuasion, used it for used it, to climb. And I was lazy, right? Like I wasn't even like climbing. I just wanted to manage people. And, I was working at call centers. It was like that one call close, boiler room type setting. It was fun. I thought it was rewarding, but it was nasty. You talked about like recognizing people come in the room, you've been late, you're cool about it. Back then, man, I would hire people if they showed up on the Monday they started 5 minutes late, 3 minutes late. I'd welcome them right out to the front door. Right. I didn't care who they were.
Right. And if
I think back at that, and it's just a totally different person. And I wasn't being mean. I would do it. When you go back to authentic intention, in that moment, my intentions were authentic, right? So I wasn't a different person. I was still operating under that authenticity, but what changed was the direction of where that was going. It wasn't towards myself, it was towards other people. So that's a big difference, man. Yeah. And I was able to change that in my vacuum. Once I started to operate outside a vacuum though, and it's like, well, how am I going to be reciprocal in an environment with a lot of people that aren't reciprocal, right? Aren't reciprocating? I'm going to get eaten, right? And it was very threatening.
Right. Moving from persuasion to what you called a sower, and that word really struck me. I expected you to say seller. And in my mind, I thought, oh, I hope he repeats the word again. And you did. And you said sower. And of course, that's profound. What you're talking about. You're talking about something on a couple of different levels, which is making an investment in another person in order to receive the benefit from that. And then in a broader context, one realizes that we have to sow many seeds. We got to get up every morning at sunrise and get the seeds and throw them out into the soil. Some are going to grow, some are not. Some are going to need some help, some are not. Some are going to need some fertilizer, some are going to need some looking after. Some won't make sense to even look after. And if I could take that to the next level, I think that's, first of all, that's fantastic. That's what all of us, I think, eventually discover in sales, is that you're running from call to call, from meeting to meeting. You're calling these people, you don't know who they are. You're cold calling, you're getting rejected, you're having to find boundaries, you're having to mentally protect yourself, because rejection is hard, regardless of whether or not you're the most confident person. I mean, it is possible, but rejection still is hard. And yes, we develop, typically what happens is that it goes one of two ways. Sellers who start off and work in the trench and then slowly get themselves out of the trench, you learn a lot of different things. Sometimes people just say, all right, I just have to work harder, faster, and care less. And then other people say, if I worked in quotes smarter, maybe I wouldn't have to work as hard. And all of us want to lean towards that. We've heard the old, hey, work smarter, not harder rule. Well, what does that mean? What does smarter mean? I mean, I guess I'm gonna leave you with that. What do you think? What does it mean to work smarter?
Help more people.
Tie in to authentic intention.
It means help more people.
Bingo. Now I know, I'm talking and I sound like some kind of a authoritarian guru of these things, and I'm speaking very declaratively, but give me an opportunity to just explain why I feel confident and fearless about speaking about certain things. So we've known each other for a little while. We, I think, really resonated pretty quickly because we're on that same path. We're on that same path to help other people. And we've been in the trench and we've done the cold calling and we've done the give to get. And the give to get, all those are really, really great. I think it's a terrific, if your goal is to be unselfish, let's just say that your goal is to be unselfish. I think it's a terrific model, is to start off selfishly by selling in order to make money, selling in order to get the deal, giving in order to get. Because you do that enough times, you start to get pretty good at giving. And after enough time, all beings eventually discover their purpose is service. But it takes so much work. It takes so much give to get, so much invest and reap, so much sowing and harvesting, so much learning from your mistakes. You just don't know. You got to be the person who walks into the meeting late. You got to be the person who's at the table watching the person walking in and having the consciousness to understand that they might feel a little uncomfortable, that they might feel a little sensitive, that it may not be appropriate to smirk or to give them a look, or most people would say, oh, that person's actually the person that's behind the table, the person who's done all this work in the trench, person who's really figuring out, wait a minute, actually feels good to help these people. I don't know when I'm going to get paid back from these people. I'm going to help this person out. It feels good. Why does it feel good? It feels good because, first of all, you have a gene called the oxytocin receptor. And when people physically perform acts of kindness and unselfishness, your body, the Homo sapiens species, responds with the uptake of oxytocin, which is actually considered an endorphin. And it's well known, very, very well documented, right, that this is a more prevalent condition in women because it and found in the breasts, so that when women are nursing their babies, the actual physical act of nursing is triggering that gene, which causes the production of more oxytocin, which is a euphoric type of chemical that reinforces the behavior of nursing. So if I heard you started it at SUSE, and I send you a note, hey, welcome to SUSE, Joe, I feel good about that. I don't know if you're going to be able to help me to find deals. I don't know if you're going to talk to the boss and tell what a great guy I am. Hey, Jim, and I just, how's your first week? Oh, I just started, and this guy, Jim Gleason, just said I was, just welcome me to the team. I don't expect that. I don't think you're going to do that. I do it because I've learned through practice, through showing up, regardless of how difficult my circumstances are. I just keep plugging away, and then eventually I start to really feel physically good. And then my brain makes the connection. Wait a minute, if I do this kind of behavior, I feel good. Without these principles, without these chemical principles, there would be no volunteer work. There would be no people, by the way. So my point is, life is short, it's finite. Take that seriously. Start showing up, be brave, And the way you can do that is by loving yourself with authentic intention, regardless whether or not the other person is going to return that love, return that sale, or return the kindness.
Yep.
What do you think?
Keep it there, right? Keep it there, no matter what. Keep it there. Authentic intention for loving kindness towards yourself. And if you're following the golden rule, then you'll go ahead and serve everybody with that same loving intention.
It always gets back to that. I mean, we could talk about sales, we could talk about money, we could talk about the economy, we could talk about technology. I wanted to talk about technology. We could talk about the talent economy. I've got hours of material that we need to cover together on the talent economy. But I don't know. I cannot seem to avoid the fact at the end of the day, it is about the golden rule. And unfortunately, we meaning people in our society, most of us have been kind of culturally indoctrinated to kind of scoff at that,
Yeah.
I mean, what am I going to walk into a room and I'm going to say, hey, I love myself. I love you, therefore.
It's the persistence.
Who can do that?
It's persistence, right? So it's something that people don't get exposed to that we do in our profession is consistent rejection all day, every day. Now, you get that in the world, right? The world serves that up in fine doses, no matter who you are. But we walk into it as a daily profession, right? People seek to escape that, and they do a good job of it if you're fortunate, and especially in our blessed nation and culture, right? So we as a profession, that's what we do. That's hunting for us, right? Rather than rubbing up against rocks and sleeping on cliffs and all that dangerous stuff. We're getting slammed on all day, right? Dirt kicked in our eyes. It's and I'm somewhat hyperbolic, right? But it's not for the faint of heart, right? And a lot of people get into sales and they get into something else pretty quickly. So if you make it, you've got a certain aptitude for it, and then if you've made it for a while, you've built up quite a muscle, and that muscle is that keep going back, right? And if you can take that into the area of your life which you're talking about, which is I can go in and try this, but it might not feel good the first time, right? And actually, Jim, I'll promise you something, it won't feel good the first time. So
but you got to show up.
You got to show up.
Show up.
But how can you show up when I don't have to, right? So that's the thing, right? Like, people have a lot of listen, and this is moment by moment. Not showing up happens moment by moment. So you have to figure out how to show up and listen to the good angel every moment, not just 5%, 10%. And the closer you get to that, the closer you get to synchronicity, the closer you get to understanding that coincidences aren't coincidences, the closer you get to seeing the path before you, not in a visual way, but just knowing that you're on it, right? And the confidence just keep going forward. So when you show up every day, you're doing it, right? That's all it takes, right? That's really it, just showing up every day. Now, there is more to that, right? You do have to do more than show up every day. You have to learn. So when you got into the chemicals related to it, the science behind it, so that's the learning part, right? That's great.
Oh my gosh, you knew. Go ahead.
But Jim, wait, there's great and the learning, and that's easy. There's learning is easy today, right? Like, bye universities, right? It's people are going to be able to learn without you, right? People have learning at their fingertips. Hopefully they're getting more of the right learning than the wrong learning. But past learning comes experience, and that's where you and I and others in our profession and the like are very blessed if we can take the voluntary discomfort we put ourselves through for, in sometimes, a very long off reward, and all times a very long off reward, unless you're thinking of it improperly. There's going to be a hesitancy when you're in these other areas where you're really not ever in a do or die situation, right? Should I have that extra Diet Coke? Should I not avert my eyes? Should I, hold the door? A million different things, moment by moment, right? Should I step over the soda can that's clean? It doesn't have any, smudging on it. There's a trash can right here, even if there wasn't, things like that, right? You're moment by moment, you're getting asked, will you love? Will you return it, right? And will you show up, right? Will you step into it? Will you continue to be brave in this moment like you were in the last moment, hopefully? And I think that's where that repetition and that muscle and that application, right? Because once you know that the chemicals are there, then you have to do the application. Now, there's one more thing. There's the application over a long period of time, right? So you develop the muscle over a long period of time to keep going back to the well, but then keep going back to the well over a long period of time. That is the key, right?
Weightlifting is such a good analogy for this. And I'm going to simplify what you just said, because you just repetitiously, you lift that 5-pound dumbbell. It's hard. But you know that there are other people who have done that. They do it a lot. They use heavier weight. They do it frequently, and they look good, and they can lift stuff with ease. So you know it's possible.
Can I ask you a question?
Hold on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Please hold your thought. But here's the key. Anything is possible.
Yes.
I really want to drive home. You started the call with authentic intention, and I really latched onto that because it is the first step in all creation. I know that sounds very grandiose, but I'm gonna prove this. The bottom line is that you got to show up. You can show up if you're brave. You can be brave. It's easier to be brave if you know in advance that really anything is possible, that anything can happen. So, for example, you don't have to know a person. You don't have to know a weightlifter in order to be guaranteed that the effort to get healthy is going to be beneficial. Maybe you've read it in a book. Maybe you've seen it on TV, or somebody else has told you. Maybe nobody has told you, and it's your own original idea, and you've got a feeling like, if only I kind of walked around or moved these arms a little bit more or something, and then all of a sudden you do it. You're listening to yourself, and all of a sudden you get the same end result. This is the hard part. In my mind, this is the true blocker. If you were to ask me, how do I create authentic intention? I don't know if people can create anything if they believe that some things are not possible. You have to start with that thought.
Yeah, well, I think it's, Jim, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I should say I hate to sound like I'm one-upping, because I'm not. I want to add a little bit to that.
No, go for it. I want to learn.
It's totally about that, right? But a little bit of a nuance there. It's about understanding you can't listen to yourself, because if you did, you'd go crazy. So you have to actually just go and receive. And when you say just show up and realize everything's possible, you got to show up and realize anything is possible. I think you have to say everything is, and stop there, right? And
everything is, and stop there. I love that.
And then move forward in faith. They talked about that a little bit there, but I want to share another experience that opened me up to that perspective, because that's one of those things where, I've been talking about our fortune in our profession of having the direct experience to some of these things, right? Kind of like, because we work in a laboratory type thing. Something you can't bottle up is something that happened to me a few months ago. It struck me as profound when it happened, but I really only mentioned it to a handful of people, but it's extraordinarily profound.
It speaks to authentic intention over time. And here's how you can prove it. Okay. If anybody has proof that, if anybody wants proof that, in my ups and downs, that through it all, I wasn't living with authentic intention, at least most of the time, all the time. Listen to this. I'm standing out in my yard, got a burn pile going. I'm dragging some wood and threw some wood on the fire. And I look down the hill, about 500 yards away is the road, and I see cars driving by. And I had a vision in my head, and I remembered being in my car, driving down the road, looking at a burn pile, looking at a guy, throwing wood on the pile, and thinking that's me. So
You're throwing wood on the pile and you're thinking that it's you? Could say it again?
So I'm standing in my yard in 2020. And I'm burning wood. And I see the cars down the hill, right, from me. And in that moment, I have a memory. I have a vision in my head from what I was doing back about 13 years before. I was on a very similar road, not too far from that spot where I was standing, right, the road I was looking at. 13 years ago, I was driving down the road. I remember seeing, when I looked from the road out on the hill at the fire I saw burning, at somebody else throwing wood on their pile, and saying to myself very positively, not getting hung up on it and staying on it, that's me, right? My ride down that road, it stayed with me for a little bit, and then life went on. Okay.
Yeah.
So that, when that happened, I thought about all the people that talked about vision boards and intention, and Wayne Dyer, and the people that I gave Wayne Dyer a lot of attention before. I was giving people attention, like I said, 10 years ago to this, right? But a lot of them talk about that, right? I had my vision board and it happened. So there was my vision board story where I had an image. I created an image in my head and I made an intention, and I actually found myself 13 years later in that moment that I intended.
Wow, man, that's pretty intense and pretty rare. Meaning, what are the odds of that happening, right? Something significant is going on.
Is it, Jim?
For that
reconnection.
Tell me, is it really?
No, tell me. Come on, man.
Why is it important?
Am I a romantic? Is that just, come on, man. You were driving.
No, not in the slightest. No, in fact, no, I'm really glad you asked. And before we run out of time, because I have a 12 noon, I really want to assure you, here's what happens, man. And I'm going to have to speak declaratively, and next time I'll provide more explanation about my credentials and why I feel that what I say is true and worth listening to. But what happens basically is that when a person starts to consider that an intentional intention really might be worth the time, or it might do something, or when one starts to ponder the word higher, ponder the phrase consciousness, just ponder, like, what does it mean? Like, is that just new age crap? What does that mean? What actually happens is that a person starts to experience more coincidences. So there's literally a physical reaction to all of this intention, desire for self-service, higher consciousness, noticing other people when they're sad, getting more in touch with your own feelings. More than anything, I would say, when you start to really consider, how can I use intention to make my life better? However you want to instrument that. Maybe it's just waking up in the morning and saying, good morning to your spouse. That's absolutely something. You're wishing them a good morning. That's an authentic intention. All of a sudden, you have a really good morning, and or maybe you say, I really intend to get healthy. You watch a scary show and you're like, oh boy, I really need to take care of my health. And you have an intention to get healthy. And so you're thinking about that, and then you tell your spouse, and they're like, yeah, I would like to, I think that that's a great idea. And then all of a sudden you get a ping on your phone, and it's some kind of a random, thing. Oh, get this health newsletter. And then you tell your spouse, and you're like, wait a minute, I just had this funny coincidence that just happened right now. And then but here's what's really going on. There, as you said 45 minutes ago, there are no such things as coincidences. And let's just imagine, I'm gonna give you another parable. Let's just say that you had a great glass of some kind of wine, this red wine from Italy. It's a certain year, it was aged. You're like, oh man, this is great wine. And so at the restaurant, you go home the next night, you're having some red meat, and you're like, oh, I'd love to have that wine again. This wine is so good. Now, you could plant a vineyard, grow the grapes, harvest the grapes, press the grapes, age the grapes, make the wine, drink the wine. You could, right? Alternatively, you could go to the store, find the wine, buy the wine, pour it in the glass, drink the wine. But if a friend was to show up, no, so let's just say, you've got the image of the wine in your mind, you could taste it in your mouth, you see the label, you remember the name of the wine, you're just thinking how satisfied it was. You haven't had that kind of wine. Red wine sometimes can be bitter. It's like, oh no, this is so smooth. I could drink this like milk. This is beautiful, beautiful wine. And then let's imagine your friend knocks on the door and hands you that same bottle of wine. Now, let's just say that can happen. All of us have had that kind of freaky coincidence experience. But if that happens twice, you'd say, oh my goodness, that must be called an Uber coincidence. And what's the difference between an Uber coincidence and a regular coincidence? But if it was to happen a third time, you'd probably start to wonder what is actually going on. Is there really a connection? What are these underlying physics that seem to have a cause and effect? Now, I'll leave it right there, because that is everything.
That is everything. Leave it right there. That was fun. We need to come back. We need to get more credentials. We need to talk a little bit more about
the talent economy.
The talent economy. We'll bridge the talent economy with the one thing that we didn't talk enough about. We talked about the intention side. Now we got to talk about the importance of the service ingredient and reciprocity, and that'll lead us right into the talent economy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jim, thank you so much. We'll do this. I think noon works. That's a really good time.
We'll do it again next week. I think that's
next week's a vacation week. So we'll probably pick it up in 2 weeks. Yeah, let's pick it up in 2 weeks on Friday, and we'll keep rolling. I love it.
Look, I got it's July 2nd is the 2 weeks from the 2 Fridays. Let's just pop it in there and we'll see, and we'll give it a shot. I'm sending off the invite right now. So that would be awesome, Joe. And just want to wrap up here. I got one more minute to thank you. Okay. When I saw the video about Geneva, I hadn't heard about Geneva. Of course, your message is spot on. Everyone needs to hear that 7-minute video. There are alternatives to Facebook. This is not a technological problem. It's really about, what do people want? Do people want to participate in each other's lives, or would they rather have Facebook do that for them? And I'm struck. I was blown away. It's not a technological problem.
It's not.
It's not even a problem, to be honest. It's just all of us are in different stages of waking up. When I hear that
we're ahead because of our profession, dude, being in tech and in sales, being in those two veins. I was thinking about it, dude. It's
oh my gosh. You know what? Yeah, I really want to keep talking too, but I maybe want to start there, because I've been doing this for a very long time. I was a very, very early internet pioneer selling multimedia in San